This Omega chapter didn't start with rumours, it started with access. Time spent early with the Generation 4 Planet Ocean, not as a launch spectacle but as an engineering object, and the realisation that Omega was quietly changing direction. Then came a pause, a Seamaster 300M Professional on the wrist, driven north to Glencoe, not to test it, not to photograph it, but to stand at the famous waterfall and to consider what this watch has been and what it can't continue to be forever, because some designs don't end with failure. They end with a design pivot guided by engineering innovation. That led to a fully resolved retrospective review, not a retcon, of the current Baselworld 2018 Seamaster 300M, to acknowledge that its production run is reaching a natural conclusion, an era finishing cleanly, and from there the next step to take was speculation, not based on rumours but on implemented evidence, using the engineering decisions already visible in that Generation 4 Planet Ocean to understand what Omega is likely preparing next for the Seamaster 300M Professional. This isn't about leaks, it's about reading intent. Welcome to the Omega montage. Welcome back to Horological. There's a brand new Omega Planet Ocean, and I got to spend 30 minutes with it in the boutique last night. I handled it, I wore it, I photographed it, but I noticed something about it that nobody else seems to be talking about. Welcome back to Horological. This watch is absolutely stunning, bold, modern, sculpted, brutalist and robust, almost perfect. But we'll talk about the only issue I found with it later on in the video. Despite the new case, the integrated strap system, those brutalist end links and some of the best case finishing Omega has produced in years, there's just one thing holding it back from being Omega's new Rolex Submariner competitor. It could also reflect in the soon to be released Seamaster 300M Professional 2026. So let's talk about this new Q4 2025 Planet Ocean watch. All the good points first, and there are many good points to reflect on. The instant I picked this watch up, I could tell Omega didn't just lightly refresh the Planet Ocean, they rebuilt it. This isn't a facelift, it's a new case architecture. This could be the start of a new design language direction for Omega. This is an important watch, it's an important release that seeds the path for the new Seamaster 300M Professional. Sharper lines, more confident transitions, stronger, brutalist, modern and deliberate, rather than inherited from previous generations. The finishing is spectacular. In hand, light glides across the finishing, polished accents are controlled. The whole watch has a machined, almost architectural personality. The chamfer transitions are next level finishing, and paired with the orange rubber strap, the wrist presence is serious but playful at the same time. Here's a quick look at the key specifications. The case diameter is 42mm, the thickness is 13.8mm, the lug width is 21mm, and the lug to lug is 47.5mm. The movement is Omega's 8912 self-winding movement. The power reserve in this model is 60 hours, and it has a sapphire crystal with anti-reflective coating on both sides. The water resistance is 600 metres, and the weight on the orange rubber strap or the black rubber strap is 124 grams. One of Omega's most interesting decisions here is the integrated strap and bracelet system. It borrows from the language of integrated sports watches. Think Royal Oak, Nautilus, and apply that angular flow to a diver. The overall result is impressive. The strap flows directly into the case. The end links look like industrial architecture. The watch feels more premium and more cohesive. And the best part, it finally gives the Planet Ocean a much stronger identity, one that doesn't live in the Submariner's shadow. This case might be the most confidently finished Planet Ocean Omega has ever produced. This is bold, sharp, modern Omega, not derivative, not imitative. And if this is the direction for the entire line, including the forthcoming Seamaster 300M Professional, then I'm absolutely all for it. The configuration I handled, the orange rubber strap, it was available to me on the night with no wait list at £7,400. That puts this generation of Planet Ocean close to the Rolex Submariner pricing territory, and this is Omega signalling we're playing at the top table here, and honestly, based on the finishing, they almost deserve it. Almost. The bezel action still isn't there. It's improved, but it's not on the same level as a Submariner or even a Tudor Blancpain. The new Planet Ocean still has a small amount of backplay. It's not huge, but it's there. Rolex uses a ceramic bearing supported bezel system with a vertical click spring and ratchet wheel architecture. It is widely acknowledged as the best 120 click bezel in the industry. No debate. Tudor uses a ceramic bearing system on the newer Blancpain models, and that is widely regarded as the best 60 click bezel in the industry. No debate about that either. Omega uses a soft detent spring system. It doesn't measure up to the competition. It's harsher in operation, and I now have experienced several watches with noticeable backplay, including my own Seamaster. For a 7k plus watch with a brand new outstanding case design, it's just not good enough. A watch designed to compete against the best in the industry. This really matters. Rolex's bezel is crisp, perfectly indexed, zero play. Tudor's ceramic bearing system is incredibly tactile, zero play there as well. Omega's, it's slightly harsher, slightly less refined, less smooth in action, and a noticeable amount of backplay. It doesn't ruin the watch, far from it, but it does prevent it from being a complete package. A bezel is more than a tool. It's a tactile interface signalling precision and manufacturing prowess, and when you're asking Submariner money, the bezel has to feel as premium as the rest of the watch, and that's the thing. Omega absolutely nailed everything else. They nailed it. New case, new geometry, integrated strap system, bold wrist presence, incredible finishing, a real design identity. That's why this bezel stands out so much. It's the single remaining weakness on an otherwise outstanding dive watch. After getting hands-on with it, here's the truth. This new Planet Ocean is one of Omega's most modern and confident designs in years. It's bold, beautiful, over-engineered, but in the best way possible. But it's also frustrating because it's only 10% away from being the true Submariner rival that Omega fans have waited years for. If Omega tightens the bezel tolerances, this becomes a world-class dive watch capable of challenging anything at any price right now on the market. It's a stunning watch. That's 90% of the way there. There's a strong rumour that Omega will launch the new Seamaster 300M Professional at the end of Q1 2026. That timing, that lines up perfectly with Omega's historical behaviour. They love to release models just ahead of industry events like Watches and Wonders. Let's just hope that the bezel on the new Seamaster 300M Professional is just a touch better engineered than this one. And remember, watch collecting isn't logical, but it is horological. There's a certain kind of day where you just need to get out, not to escape anything, but to reconnect with the things that make you feel alive. For me, that usually means two things: a great road and a great watch. And today, I'm taking both of my favourite daily drivers on a little run to somewhere special. Somewhere I often come to around about New Year to contemplate what has been and what is yet to pass. My Audi S4, in my opinion, the best daily driver performance saloon of the last decade. And on the wrist, the Omega Seamaster 300M Professional, the perfect all-weather companion for Scotland's ever-changing conditions. Two machines built for real-world performance, with engineering stories worth telling. There's a reason Scotland feels like home for cars like this. Rain, damp tarmac, sudden weather changes, blind corners, and the kind of scenery that wakes you up from the inside out. And this S4, with its Torsen Quattro system, feels like it was built for these roads. Sure, there are newer, faster cars, but on a changeable Scottish winter day, there's nothing like the cockpit of a full-on Audi Quattro. It strikes that perfect balance between feel, power, and everyday usability. There's something wonderfully analogue in how it communicates. You feel the tyres working, you trust it immediately. Everything about it says, let's go, any weather, anytime, anywhere. And the watch on my wrist speaks the exact same language. The Seamaster 300M Professional in blue with that splash of red on the seconds hand is the horological equivalent of grippy all-weather tyres. It's dependable, comfortable, rugged, and built for the reality of daily life, not just the photo shoots. I run Pirelli all-weather tyres on the S4, not the flashy summer performance compounds, not the aesthetic first choice, but the sensible one, because daily driving in the Highlands, it isn't about looking good, it's about staying safe, especially up here. And funnily enough, I wear this Seamaster in an all-weather configuration too. Today I'm running an Alpine silicon strap, soft, grippy, flexible and unbelievably comfortable. Sure, it's not the shiny Omega bracelet, but it's the option you actually want when the conditions turn. Just like the tyres, it's the smarter choice. For grip, for comfort, for confidence, for daily life. Daily driver car, daily driver watch, both built for the reality of wet roads, weather tans and real miles. And speaking of miles, there are few places in the world that beat the Scottish Highlands on a moody day. The mountains disappear into clouds, the road bends gently like it's carving its way into a different century. The air is colder, sharper. I've seen minus 13.5 on the car's dash today. That kind of wakes you up. This is where machines earn their character and where you learn something about yourself too. It's funny, people think the Rolex versus Omega debate is the story, but for me it's never been about status. It's about the engineering, the heritage, about the decisions that brilliant people made decades ago that still affect our wrists and the roads today. We're due a new Omega Seamaster, and Audi has moved on to newer platforms, but both of these machines mark a period in time where technology and performance converged in a purposeful, deliberate, almost perfect way. Before petrol particulate filters and lane keep assist was by default, before embossed casebacks gave way to cheaper laser aberrated abomination, both products have flaws, but in the best possible way. The way that adds quirk and character, that polarising helium escape valve, that random head-snapping downshift when you're pulling up to a red traffic light while on the school run, or the odd random pop and bang when on overrun on a cold day. Head turning just when you don't want it, but that little bit of character is what separates these products. That ability to be a daily driver, to fly under the radar most of the time, but just subtly remind you, hey, I'm special when you least expect it. I did seriously consider an RS4, but in the B9 generation it was a stay only, or Avant in fluent Audi speak. But like many a Rolex these days, that car can attract too much of the wrong kind of attention, which unfortunately moves both a Submariner and an RS4 out of daily driver contention. Take the Seamaster's Heartbeat, the George Daniels coaxial escapement, the quirky 3.5Hz amplitude, a revolution in how watches manage friction, accuracy and longevity. One man, one idea, and decades later Omega have built an entire generation of movements around that. Now look at the S4's Torsen Quattro system, a purely mechanical masterpiece of torque distribution, born not from committees or market research, but from engineers who cared deeply about how a car behaved at speed on wet, uneven, unpredictable roads. Two different worlds, two different industries, but the same philosophy: engineering first, marketing second. And that's why these two daily drivers resonate with me so much. They're brutally honest, they're practical, they're deeply capable. They're not trying to be anything other than what they are. And if you love design, you start noticing the same thing in their shapes too. The S4 silhouette, that sculpted classic Audi saloon line, long shoulder square stance, subtle aggression. It's recognisable from a distance without screaming for attention. And the Seamaster, those lyre lugs, one of the great case shapes in watchmaking, flowing curves that somehow look both sharp and soft at the same time, a deliberate sculpture, instantly identifiable. Two objects shaped by people who understood the importance of silhouette, functional beauty, not vanity. Stopping here at the waterfall above Glencoe, this is where everything slows down. You hear the rush of the water, you feel the damp air settle on the car, the watch picks up beads of rain on the sapphire crystal, and suddenly you're reminded why these things matter. It's not the horsepower, it's not the depth rating, it's not the branding, it's the companionship these machines give you, the miles, the memories, the little routines we build around them, the quiet moments they enhance without ever asking for attention. Daily drivers aren't meant to be admired from afar, they're meant to be lived with. Both of these are lived with, I've got marks in the crystal on the outer ER of my Omega Seamaster. There's a couple of dings in the side of the car from parking it in busy car parks. They're both meant to be lived with. I stand here at this waterfall high above Glencoe, as I have many times before, and I reflect 2025 was an incredibly difficult year in many different ways, but it was formative and character building. I spent several months legally blind. An amazing surgeon sorted that, and here I am back doing what I love: watches, driving and creating. 2026 hosts a different promise. The healing continues, and I appreciate what I have even more than I did before. I am full of optimism. As the day begins to fade, a different kind of beauty arrives. This S4 has the incredibly expensive complex matrix LED headlights, the kind of technology that feels like science fiction when you're driving through the Highlands at night. In the Seamaster, the lume is no joke. It glows like a promise. I'm still here, I've still got your back. Both of them equally capable in the dark, both of them designed for the real world. And as the sky turns black, there's something poetic about seeing the watch loom pulse as the road ahead lights up in perfect beams. Some days are for adventure, some days are for rest, and some days are for rediscovering the things that you already own and remembering why they matter. This Audi S4, this Omega Seamaster, two daily drivers that have earned their place in my life through miles, memories and moments just like today. And as the fun continues into the night, the only thing left to do is keep driving. The road is open, the watch is ticking, and the adventure doesn't stop just because the sun goes down. And remember, watch collecting isn't logical, but it is horological. Let's talk today about the Omega Seamaster 300M Professional, specifically this blue 2019 model with the laser ablated ceramic wave cut dial, date window at 6 o'clock, arguably the most vanilla Seamaster currently available. This watch is a major flaw, that due to the Generation 4 Planet Ocean release, it now looks like Omega will not be addressing this flaw. It is not the helium escape valve. Subjectively, I like that feature. It has been the asymmetric signature of this iconic, reasonably accessible dive watch for several generations now. If you want to understand this watch at a slightly deeper level before the imminent arrival of its successor, welcome back to Horological. This particular version came into being in 2018, announced at Baselworld and then widely available of Q4 that year. It has had a good long production run, probably prolonged due to the Bond franchise still deliberating over choosing a new Bond after Daniel Craig's effective retirement from the films. Although he is playing an active role in Omega marketing and product placement campaigns, he has had a good production run too. The Planet Ocean Generation 4 is out, and we can safely assume the updated 300M Professional will soon follow. This is an excellent daily luxury Swiss watch. It does not attract the wrong kind of attention and has all the bells and whistles you would ever require of a daily worn luxury dive watch. The dial is unique in this product line, being a zirconia ceramic laser ablated wave cut technical masterpiece. It is polarising, no doubt about that. It has had its equal share of detractors and fans alike. I consider myself a bit of a fan. When this dial catches the light in a certain way, it comes alive. It can then quickly fade back, to relative obscurity, all in the blink of an eye. This visual effect acts as a if you know nod to other owners of this watch. The older, tighter wave pattern dials from earlier references continue to have their own hardcore fan base, and the debates and forums are never ending about which dial occupies the top spot for design intent and materials implementation. An observation I have made is the traditional Omega fan base does not approve of laser engraving, the new Planet Ocean caseback being a prime example of this in action. From a pure materials implementation and design standpoint, this dial, it is a technical tour de force, especially at this price point. In hand, this watch impresses immediately. The lyre lugs are well known and respected. The heft of the watch head is tangible. General fit and finish is excellent. It is a tough, well-built watch, no doubt whatsoever. It leans into luxury well without falling into whimsy like some of the Blancpain references do. A guilty pleasure, but guilty nonetheless. Transitional chamfers are sublime. Polishing and brushing techniques are industry leading. Even after all these years, this stands up well. Let's look at a quick spec slide of this watch. The case material is 316L stainless steel. Case diameter 42mm. Thickness 13.6mm. Lug width 20mm. Lug to lug 49.9mm. The movement is the Omega 8800 coaxial automatic caliber. Power reserve 55 hours. Crystal domed sapphire with AR applied to both sides. Water resistance 300 metres. And on the OEM bracelet, sized for a 7-inch wrist, it weighs 168 grams. Omega have such a large range of watches, and that allows them to individually align well-built tool-forward intent to a high degree in this watch, but still offer choice to the buyer looking for something a little more gada or conservative, if you like, elsewhere in the range. Within the wider collection, this is one of the most popular references alongside the Speedmaster Professional, and the stability of these two product lines over a long time, that allows Omega to carry a massive product catalogue and not completely implode or suffer from product dilution. But without those two key references pulling so hard, the brand would be sinking quicker than a plow-prof into the Mariana Trench. The main purpose of this watch is to offer the archetypal desk diver a luxury tool-forward option while leaving the more brutalist industrial technical divers to the plow-profs and Planet Oceans of this world. The caseback in this watch is a sapphire exhibition caseback. It allows a view of the British George Daniels designed coaxial escapement movement. Finishing quality at this price point is high, with Geneva striping, decorated bridges, and an overall feel that this movement was designed to be seen. The tank track bracelet this watch came with is heavy, perhaps a little bit too heavy for daily wear aspirations, the full system being noticeably heavier than a Submariner. The bracelet also doesn't taper. It is not as aligned with the head of the watch as it could be. The clasp and dive extension, however, they are spot on, solid, secure feeling and well constructed. I have struggled to narrow my strap bracelet choices down for this watch, and even after all this time, I am still rotating it between rubber, silicone and mesh, enjoying it in all those configurations but not committed to one option enough to head to the Omega boutique, wallet in hand, and finally nail down an expensive Omega OEM option yet. The straps I rotate are all on my affiliates pages and have been an excellent, inexpensive way to experience this watch without needlessly spending money. The indices, dial printing and the handset all stand up to macro well. There has been continued uproar about the skeletonised handset, which although executed well from a technical standpoint, they do not stand up to the high legibility requirements of diving, effectively moving the watch away from true diver and into the desk diver luxury, but with capability category. It is a well-respected reference nonetheless. The dial is a little bit font heavy, but the touch of red on the settings hand linking to the red Seamaster text is a nice touch and plays colour theory in a nice but subtly sophisticated way. Lume is good. It doesn't participate in the extreme Lume arms race that we're seeing from some micro brands and the likes of Christopher Ward, but it is evenly applied and completely sufficient. It neither exceeds expectations nor disappoints. That balance is harder to achieve than it initially sounds. The movement itself has been excellent, rock solid in this watch. This one runs consistently at +4 seconds per day across various usage scenarios and temperature variations. Recently while in Glencoe, I logged a temperature of -13.5 while I retreated back to the heated car seats mid-take at the waterfall scene. The watch didn't miss a beat. The 3.5 Hz beat rate of this watch is a rare thing these days. It offers a rare balance of robustness and resolution while allowing a healthier power reserve without resorting to complex sequential multi-barrel systems or the real-world power reserve drift that often goes unmentioned when increasing barrel size. On the wrist, the Seamaster wears big, not excessively so. On my 7-inch wrist, it stays on the right side of respectable presence, but discreet enough for daily wear. This watch is a true convergence of many clever but restrained design decisions, none pushed too far. That balance is rare. The Seamaster line is one of Omega's most historically significant, and this reference will stand out in hindsight as the closing chapter of the visible helium escape valve era. And now the real issue. The one thing that Omega still hasn't addressed, the anti-reflective coating applied to both sides of the domed sapphire crystal. Almost every real-world worn example of this watch I have handled, including my own, they show marks on the outer AR coating. And while this watch crystal looks spectacular under boutique lighting conditions, it simply just doesn't stand up to the rigours of daily life. For a watch positioned as a daily luxury tool watch, that's not good enough. What makes this harder to ignore is that Omega has continued this approach with the Generation 4 Planet Ocean while removing the characterful helium escape valve. In my opinion, Omega fixed the wrong problem. But then again, watch collecting, it isn't logical, but it is horological. The Horological Seamaster 300M Professional video is out, and the feedback tells me something important. Not that people wanted just another review, but that people are trying to understand what comes next. Omega doesn't move randomly, and when something changes on the planet Ocean, it very rarely stays isolated. If you want to understand where the next Seamaster 300M Professional is heading, you don't look at rumours, you look at engineering decisions that have already been made. I've got my spec slide of the new Seamaster to share. Let's figure this out together. Welcome back to Horological. On the Generation 4 Planet Ocean, Omega didn't soften it, redesign it or hide it, they removed it entirely, the helium escape valve. That matters far more than most people realise. The helium escape valve was never just a functional component. It became a visual shorthand, a piece of identity that told you instantly this was an Omega dive watch. So when Omega removes it from their most capable professional dive watch, it isn't nostalgia being abandoned. It's a problem that's been engineered out of existence. While I was in the boutique, I asked the obvious question, why now? The answer wasn't aesthetic, it was engineering led. I was told Omega had developed a titanium crystal retaining ring system, a structural solution that reinforces the crystal assembly itself, effectively negating the pressure differential issue the helium escape valve was originally designed to manage. In simple terms, Omega hasn't deleted the valve, they've brute forced it into retirement through materials science and mechanical architecture. Instead of venting pressure after the fact, the system maintains structural integrity at the crystal interface itself. Water resistance is preserved, pressure tolerance is maintained, and the need for an external escape route simply disappears. That reframes the entire decision. This isn't Omega chasing minimalism, it's Omega solving the underlying problem permanently. And now I look at a quick spec slide of the current Generation 4 Planet Ocean. The case diameter 42mm, thickness 13.8mm, lug width 21mm, the lug to lug 47.5mm. The movement is Omega's 8912 self-winding coaxial automatic calibre. Power reserve 60 hours. The sapphire crystal has AR on both sides. Water resistance 600 metres, and the weight on the rubber strap is 124 grams. And once that engineering solution exists, once it's proven on the Planet Ocean, it then becomes extremely difficult to justify keeping the valve on the Seamaster 300M. At that point, the valve stops being functional, it becomes styling. Let's look at a spec slide of the current Omega Seamaster 300M Professional. The case material is 316L stainless steel. The case diameter is 42mm, the thickness 13.6mm, the lug width 20mm, the lug to lug 49.9mm. The movement is the Omega 8800 coaxial automatic calibre. Power reserve 55 hours. The crystal is a domed sapphire with AR coating in both sides. Water resistance 300 metres. And on the OEM bracelet sized for a 7-inch wrist, it's 168 grams. Which brings us directly to the next Seamaster. I don't believe the wave dial is going anywhere. We've already seen it evolve. Early Seamaster references used a tight graphic wave pattern, decorative, almost illustrative. The current generation moved to a laser ablated ceramic dial with a looser, more organic execution. Polarising, yes, but undeniably technical. Both versions divided opinion, both are now accepted. The important thing is this, the wave dial is no longer nostalgic, it's become a manufacturing statement. Laser ablation on zirconia ceramic isn't decoration, it's process-driven design. So if the Seamaster changes, it won't abandon the wave, it will reinterpret it again, possibly with more restraint, more depth, or a hybrid execution that sits somewhere between graphic and technical evolution, not erasure. Where things really start to get interesting is the case design. The Generation 4 Planet Ocean doesn't just look different, it is different. The lyre lugs have sharpened, the geometry is more angular, more architectural, more industrial. Chamfer transitions are tighter, more deliberate. The whole watch feels less romantic and more engineered. It's a shift in design language, not brutalism for its own sake, but confidence-led implementation. A watch that no longer feels like it's borrowing visual cues from elsewhere in the catalogue. And if that's the direction Omega is taking at the top of the professional dive range, the Seamaster 300M will almost certainly echo it, but softened for the wider market, thinner, more wearable, less confrontational. Think Planet Ocean confidence filtered through Seamaster's restraint. That's where I expect it to land. Now, there is one long-standing design decision on the Seamaster that I would be genuinely surprised to see carried forward unchanged: the skeletonized handset. From a design perspective, it's clever. It reduces visual mass, it adds lightness, and it gives the dial room to breathe. From a legibility perspective though, particularly in low light, it has always been a bit of a compromise. Executed well, but compromised nonetheless. And this is where things get really interesting, because Omega has an opportunity here to solve two problems with a single engineering decision. The skeletonized handset could remain, the shape, that is, the identity, the recognisability, but the hollowed out sections could be filled with lume. That one change would materially improve legibility, especially at a glance and underwater. It would also dramatically increase the available lume surface area, which matters more than ever now. We're in the middle of a genuine lume arms race. Micro brands are pushing harder and harder with thicker applications, multiple layers, and more exotic, brighter compounds, longer persistence. In some cases, solid lume blocks are being used purely to maximise energy storage and nighttime performance. Omega doesn't need to outshout them, but it does need to remind people that it can out-engineer them. Filling the skeletonized hands with lume would do exactly that. It would preserve the Seamaster's identity, fix a well-known legibility criticism, and quietly neutralise the growing perception that micro brands are winning on nighttime performance. Two birds, one stone. That would be a very Omega solution. Where things become a little bit more complex is the bezel. I've now got out of my way to handle enough Planet Ocean Generation 4 examples to say this clearly. Omega can make an excellent bezel. When it's right, it's genuinely world class. I've handled Planet Oceans with zero backplay, beautifully judged resistance, and crisp, confident indexing. Exactly what you want at this level. But I've also handled others that weren't quite there. Some were tighter, some were loose, some exhibited small but noticeable backplay. Not enough to ruin the watch, but enough to change the feel. The issue here isn't quality, it's consistency. And this is where my own buying behaviour starts to shift slightly. Not because the watches aren't good, but because my tolerance for variation is very specific. This situation has quietly put Omega, for me personally, into a category I already understand very well. Seiko collectors will know exactly what I mean. Seiko produces some extraordinary watches, outstanding dials, strong cases, real character. But they are also well known for occasional alignment issues, bezel inserts that are a fraction off, chapter rings that don't quite line up perfectly. Because of that, I would never buy a Seiko sight unseen, not because they're poor watches, but because I want to choose my example. That's now how I feel about Omega's dive watches. Not as a downgrade, not as a criticism, but as a practical adjustment in buying behaviour. After handling enough Planet Ocean Generation 4 examples, I've reached the point where I would only ever buy one in person. I want to turn that bezel myself. I want to feel the resistance, check for play, and make sure the tactile experience matches my own expectations. Because this isn't about right or wrong, it's about subjectivity. Some collectors like a lighter bezel, some prefer something firmer, some won't notice a fraction of backplay at all. I do, and at this level that's a perfectly reasonable position to take. What this really does is quietly restore the boutique, not just as a place to transact, but as a place to select. At £7,000 or £8,000, $10,000, you're not simply buying a watch, you're procuring a watch, you're choosing the example that feels right for you. That used to be the norm in luxury watchmaking, and in a strange way, Omega's bezel variability has brought that discipline back into strong focus. It's also worth talking briefly about servicing, because this is part of that same conversation. Current Omega service times are running at around 18 weeks. You heard that right, yes, 18 weeks. And that's not unique to Omega, it's an industry-wide issue, but it does tell us something important. There is a genuine shortage of skilled watchmakers. I joked with the boutique manager that perhaps this was the strongest argument he could make yet for someone buying two watches rather than one to wear and one to cover service downtime. But behind that humour, there is a serious point. The same manager spoke openly about Omega's continual investment in watchmaking apprenticeships and training programmes. This isn't something to dismiss. Omega and the wider Swatch Group are actively investing in the continuation of the craft, funding apprenticeships, sponsoring long-term training, and building infrastructure that ensures mechanical watchmaking doesn't hollow out over the next generation. For someone to work in that Planet Ocean Gen 4 watch, it takes 7 years to train to that level. It's also visible in the UK, this investment they're making. Omega now operates a large, modern service centre as part of the wider Swatch Group facility in Southampton. A significant investment designed to bring servicing, refurbishment and technical support closer to the market. That facility isn't about marketing, it's about capacity, longevity and control over quality. When you buy into Omega, you're not just buying a watch, you're buying into a brand that is actively investing in the future of the hobby. And that matters more than it used to. Which brings me to the one issue that still hasn't been addressed. The external anti-reflective coating. I'm going to be honest here, I was so surprised when I get early access to the Generation 4 Planet Ocean, and when I asked the question, the answer was Omega is going to continue the practice of AR on the outside of the crystals. That threw me enough in that first impressions video that the removal of the helium escape valve completely escaped me. I was still processing the implications of Omega choosing to continue to do something that collectors have continually raised concerns about for years now. As Omega owners, we know this issue well. The crystal looks spectacular under boutique lighting. In real world wear, the external AR, it marks easily. It doesn't age gracefully. For a watch positioned as a daily luxury tool, that's difficult to ignore. What makes it harder to accept is the contrast, the juxtaposition. Omega has engineered away the helium escape valve through advanced materials science, but continues to apply an external AR coating that struggles long term. In my view, Omega's fixed the wrong problem. That doesn't mean the watches aren't excellent. They are. It means that they're still just short of being truly untouchable in their class. The important takeaway is this: The next Seamaster 300M Professional is coming, and the Planet Ocean Generation 4, that has already told us almost everything we need to know about it. The valve is gone, the wave dial will evolve, not disappear, and the case will become sharper, more architectural. They're going to keep those lyre lugs, but I suspect they're going to chop them flat at the ends. Not as severe as the Planet Ocean, but cut down nonetheless. And now a spec slide of what I think the new 300M Professional will be. Case material, 316L stainless steel. Case diameter, 40mm. Thickness, 15.5mm. Lug width, 20mm. Lug to lug, 48mm. The movement, the Omega automatic coaxial caliber, 8800. Power reserve, 55 hours. The crystal, sapphire domed AR both sides. Water resistance, 300 metres. And it would weigh 118 grams on an OEM rubber strap. And the handset, leave the hour hand skeletonised and fully fill in the minute hand with lume. Controversial. The overall design will be tempered more towards daily wear usage. The hands may finally become as legible as the rest of the watch deserves. Finishing will remain a strength, and some long-standing questions will remain unanswered. Omega is closer than it ever has been before, and if they tighten tolerances when it matters the most, the next Seamaster could be genuinely exceptional. Because watch collecting, it isn't logical, but it is horological. In an earlier review of the Erebus Titan, I said this: you can tell immediately that this is not Erebus's first release. This is a product of multiple design cycles and hard-learned lessons. Feeling the watch in hand, I suspect that 500 metres rating is conservative. And then I also said this: I guarantee prototype iterations were brutal on this watch. At the time, I suggested that the Titan felt like the end result of several unseen prototype iterations. I think I may have found one of them. Welcome back to Horological. To understand what's actually going on here, we need to be honest about the current state of play in watchmaking. Chinese manufacturers today possess two things at an extraordinary level: manufacturing capability and scalable delivery at industrial volume. What they generally do not possess, at least not yet, is high-level, original design leadership, deep localised marketing expertise in Western collector markets. Now imagine this scenario. Into that manufacturing environment walk two micro-brand owners, both experienced collectors, and one in particular with years of hands-on exposure to hundreds and hundreds of watches. You can probably see where this is going. Let's start with the design sheet. Both of these watches were clearly scripted from. Oversized saturation diver, check. Seiko NH35 movement, check. Helium escape valve, also check. Oversized crown, check. They both measure 7.5mm. Double dome sapphire crystal, check. At the design level brief, these watches are identical. The same problem to solve, the same engineering intent. Once you move from concept to execution, the differences do begin to appear. The Erebus lume is noticeably stronger. That comes from multiple BGW9 layers applied but also cured properly between those layers. A small detail that adds time, cost and complexity to the manufacturing process. The crown on the Erebus Titan is at 4 o'clock. The crown in the San Martin is at 3 o'clock. The bezels. The Erebus Titan has a ceramic bezel insert. The San Martin has a machined metal bezel. Think Yachtmaster but on steroids. The date configuration on the Erebus, it has a framed date window at 6 o'clock. On the San Martin, it doesn't have a date, it has a ghost date position. That last point matters. Jody knows that ghost dates are a hard no for many watch collectors, and he deliberately sidesteps that controversy. The clasp is identical in both watches, and a little bit inappropriate for both of them because it isn't a double security clasp. There are small differences in case diameter and thickness, so let's deal with that properly. The Erebus uses a stamped laser engraved caseback. The San Martin uses an embossed shark caseback. That embossed shark protrudes slightly further, which accounts for the thickness difference. As for the case diameter, the Erebus helium escape valve has a protruding collar. The San Martin valve is flush mounted. Same valve mechanism, different case interface. Mystery solved. Let's look at a spec slide of the Erebus Titan. The case diameter in this watch is 44mm, the thickness is 15.5mm, lug width is 22mm, lug to lug 48.5mm. The movement is a Seiko NH35, power reserve will be round about 41 hours. The lume is BGW9 Super Luminova. The crystal is a double domed sapphire with clear AR coating on the inside. The water resistance is 500 metres and the weight as supplied on this bracelet is 225 grams. Now let's look at a spec slide of the San Martin SN0147. The case material is 316L stainless steel. Case diameter 43mm. Thickness 15.9mm. Lug width 22mm. The lug to lug 48.5mm. The movement is a Seiko NH35 3Hz. Power reserve 41 hours. The crystal is sapphire double domed with clear anti-reflective coating. Water resistance 1000 metres and sized for my 7-inch wrist it's 225 grams. This brings me back to something I said in my Erebus Titan review. Feeling the watch in hand, I suspect that 500 metres rating is conservative. At the time, I felt the 500 metre dive watch rating was a little conservative given the construction and materials used. The San Martin is rated to 1000 metres, using effectively the same core design. This shows two very different philosophies. Erebus doesn't oversell the watch, they're building trust. San Martin are pushing the design to its perceived limit. Neither approach is wrong. One is conservative and brand protective, the other is confidence forward. I opened the San Martin. The helium escape valve is real, it is spring loaded, it does open under pressure. I can't confirm the exact release pressure, I can't confirm the calibration of it, but it is functional. The gaskets used are Vuitton fluoroelastomer, coloured black. On the Erebus Titan, the gaskets are also Vuitton, but coloured versions. That incurs a small additional cost. I've bought plenty of these in the past, and I know the cost differences between the different colours. But functionally, the performance is the same. Vuitton is exactly what you want. Excellent chemical resistance, excellent long-term compression recovery, ideal for crown assemblies with repeated mechanical use. Both watches have a machined identical NH35 movement holder. It's machined out of metal. Both watches use a wavy washer or a wave spring underneath the caseback. Its job is to maintain constant compression on the caseback gasket over time, compensating for machine tolerances, temperature changes and material relaxation. rather than relying purely on torque. The wave washer keeps the sealing system elastically pre-loaded, which helps preserve long-term water resistance and protects the gasket from uneven crushing during assembly. It's a small detail, but it's proper tool watch engineering implementation, the kind you only see when a case is designed with real pressure management in mind. Some commenters questioned how serious this watch really is. Having opened it, I can assure you this is absolutely serious engineering. On paper, the San Martin lands much cheaper. In the UK, VAT and import charges narrow that gap, but there's no escaping it. The Erebus Titan is the more expensive watch. What you get for that extra money is excellent customer support, multiple dial and colour variants, a more refined case and bracelet, a fully resolved design, not just a single execution. The San Martin is one watch. The Erebus Titan is a range of watches. Several of my collector friends already own the Erebus Titan, so I went the other way. The San Martin is the most brutal, angular, unfinished version of this design. It lacks the final layer of micro-brand polish, and I love it for that. It feels closer to a raw industrial design project. The relationship between OEM manufacturing and ODM development is complicated behind the scenes, but it becomes much more simple when you look at the end products. There is always a risk when you work with a manufacturer. They learn, they adapt, they can copy. The fact that San Martin released this watch in this form actually highlights how strong the Erebus refinement process really is. This doesn't look like bad faith, it looks like a symbiotic relationship, and when you combine a manufacturing powerhouse like San Martin with strong design instincts, proper marketing and customer-focused execution, you start to see just how much untapped potential exists at this cost envelope. That's the real story here. And remember, watch collecting isn't logical, but it is horological. The Blancpain 50 Fathoms has a reputational problem, specifically this, 45mm. On paper, the internet has already decided it's too big, unwearable unless you've got wrists like a North Sea diver. But today, standing in the Edinburgh boutique, I did something that most of these opinions haven't. I actually put it on and tried it, and what I discovered surprised me, because the truth is this: diameter isn't the real issue here, thickness is. And once you understand what Blancpain actually changed when they went from 45 to 42.3mm, you start to see that the too big argument is one of the laziest tropes in modern watch collecting. This isn't about raw numbers, it's about how these watches wear in the real world. Welcome back to Horological. I experienced these watches in the Chisholm Hunter Blancpain boutique in Edinburgh. The mission was simple: to understand Blancpain case diameters not as numbers on a spec sheet, but as lived worn objects, specifically the 45mm 50 Fathoms. Let's look at a quick spec slide of this watch. The case material is 316L stainless steel. The case diameter is 45mm. The thickness is 15.5mm. The lug width 23mm. The lug to lug 50mm. The movement is the in-house 1315 calibre. It's a 4Hz secured movement. Power reserve 120 hours. The crystal is sapphire box domed with clear AR on the inside only. Water resistance is 300 metres and it weighs 118 grams on the sailcloth strap. And the 42.3mm version, which many collectors seem to default to, is the safe choice. Let's look at a quick spec slide of this watch. The case material is 316L stainless steel. Case diameter 42.3mm. The thickness 14.3mm. Lug width 21.5mm. Lug to lug 48mm. The movement is the in-house 1315 calibre. It's a 4Hz secured movement. Power reserve 120 hours. The crystal is sapphire box domed with clear AR on the inside only. Water resistance is 300 metres and it weighs 100 grams on the sailcloth strap. What I wanted to answer was this: are these watches genuinely too big, or are we just repeating something we've heard other people say? Let's start with the controversial one. The 45mm 50 Fathoms has become shorthand online for unwearable. On a 7-inch wrist, here's what actually happens. The lug to lug is 50mm, which is completely acceptable. The lugs curve aggressively downward, hugging the wrist. There's no floating head, no top heavy wobble. In fact, on the wrist it compares very closely to my Omega Seamaster 300M Professional in the overall footprint. So where does the discomfort with the size come from? It's not the diameter, it's the thickness. At over 15mm, this watch is even thicker than a Tudor Blancpain GMT, and that's saying something. And the concave domed bezel, it doesn't help. It visually stacks height at the edge of the watch, amplifying thickness more than the case diameter ever does. This is not a desk diver, this is a capstone watch, a special occasion diver, the kind that you wear deliberately. One crucial discovery: on the 45mm, rubber over sailcloth every single time. That extra elasticity, it does something important. It anchors the head of the watch to your wrist. It absorbs micro movements and it reduces perceived top heaviness. The sailcloth looks fantastic, but the rubber turns the 45mm from challenging into cooperative. It's a small detail, but it's a big difference. The piece I tried had a solid case back, and honestly, that should be illegal. Hiding the calibre 1315 with its 18 karat gold rotor is a genuine crime. The good news: a sapphire exhibition caseback can be ordered from Blancpain, and it absolutely should be. If you're buying a 50 Fathoms, you deserve to see the movement that defines the watch. Now let's talk about the 42.3mm. This is not a shrunken 50 Fathoms, it's a re-engineered one. Here's what Blancpain actually changed. The case diameter has went from 45mm to 42.3. That's a 6% reduction. The lug width has went from 23mm to 21.5. That's a reduction of 6.52%. The lug to lug has went from 50mm to 48mm, and that's a reduction of 4%. That all tells a story. The most aggressive change is actually the lug width, not the case, and that's intentional. Narrower lugs reduce visual bulk. They improve the strap balance and soften the stance on the wrist. The lug to lug stays relatively long, preserving the 50 Fathoms silhouette. This isn't shrinkage, it's selective refinement. On wrist it measures up beautifully against a 41mm Rolex Submariner, despite what the numbers suggest. Here's the key takeaway: the 42.3 wears better, not because it's smaller, but because it's thinner and lighter. The 45mm watch is 118 grams on the sailcloth strap. The 42.3mm watch is 100 grams on the sailcloth strap. That difference is immediately noticeable, and if you go for the Type 23 titanium version, it's amplified even further. This is where daily wearability is completely won over. Not diameter, it's mass and how that mass distributes on wrist. For me, the 42.3mm steel, sailcloth is the preferred option. 42.3 titanium, I would go for the bracelet if the budget allows for it. The watch feels planted, balanced and genuinely daily capable. The same movement, the same 5-day power reserve, that same Blancpain DNA, just easier to live with. Here's my real world conclusion. The 45mm is not too big, it is too thick to be a daily worn watch, but as a statement diver, it's magnificent. The 42.3mm is the most wearable 13-15 movement 50 fathoms that Blancpain makes. But in true contrarian fashion, the one that I have shortlisted, the full fat Fathoms 45 on rubber. The dial is a killer detail here. That sloping in, then the doming effect rising up to the cannon pinion. You only get that with the 45mm. This watch is not a daily, but a dive watch collection capstone piece, because sometimes the ultimate dive watch doesn't need to be practical, it just needs to be right. And remember, watch collecting isn't logical, but it is horological. I'm late to this, by choice. There's a moment when a creator stops being an observer and becomes part of the story. And most people don't even realise that moment has already passed until the audience reacts. My horological studio overlooks Loch Lomond. It's a place that's become familiar in UK watch YouTube. Submariners thrown into the water, cinematic slow motion, a very particular kind of watch mythology being carefully constructed. I've watched some of those shoots happen, and over time I started asking a simple question. How are these trips funded? Extended stays, 5-star baronial hotels, Michelin star meals, production values that rival brand campaigns. For the first time, the economics became visible, and it's not comfortable. Welcome back to Horological. Let's be very clear about something up front. This is not about whether Christopher Ward makes bad watches. They don't. On paper, the specifications are entirely conventional. Let's look at a quick spec slide of this watch. The case material, titanium. Case diameter, 41mm. The thickness, 10.75mm. Lug width, 22mm. The lug to lug is 47.9mm. The movement, it's a Sellita SW300-1 COSC certified 4Hz. The power reserve, it's listed at between 50 and 56 hours. The crystal is sapphire with clear AR coating on the inside. Water resistance 300 metres, and it weighs 105 grams as supplied on the titanium OEM bracelet. This is not about whether watch YouTubers should be allowed to make a living. They absolutely should. This is about framing. And when framing crosses into dishonesty, even subtly, people feel it immediately. The controversy surrounding the Bark and Jack Christopher Ward collaboration, it's not about the watch itself. It's about what the watch was positioned against, to insinuate, even carefully, that a Christopher Ward using an off-the-shelf Sellita movement is competing in the same conceptual space as Rolex, Tudor or Omega simply does not sit right. Those brands build and heavily invest in in-house calibers, and that matters. And yes, Tudor does have the occasional exception like the 1926, but context is everything. This Christopher Ward is priced above the 1926, and Tudor has never positioned that watch in such elevated company. It's explicitly an entry-level model, and it reflects Tudor's origins rather than its modern market position. The real tragedy here, it isn't backlash, it's waste. Years of genuinely world-class content, photography, cinematography, storytelling, a level most creators never reach. All of that credibility boiled away by one badly judged marketing decision. The stock pot was left on too high and it boiled over. Now ask yourself, is it coincidence that at the same time this collaboration dropped, a closely connected podcast collaborator released a video strongly endorsing this watch after a run of earlier content questioning established brand hierarchies and casting doubt on long-term value retention in the luxury space? I'll leave that for you to decide, but audiences aren't stupid. They see patterns instantly. So I come down to the shores of Loch Lomond myself. I threw my own Submariner into the water, not for spectacle, but to think. And the conclusion that I came to is this: the creator flew too close to the sun, the wax melted, he hit the water, but he can swim. Someone with those skills won't stay under for long. And here's the uncomfortable part: this didn't have to go this way. If the watch had kept the standard Lumiere retail price and the collaboration had added value instead of extracting it, a couple of Bark and Jack straps, a genuine value add, a margin split that gave something back, we'd be having a completely different conversation. It would have felt like respect, honesty, pre-Watches and Wonders energy, a genuine community win. Instead we got the most expensive Lumiere, artificial scarcity, a 1 week purchase window, and cynicism dialed to the max. And that's why this will be remembered not just as a misstep, but as one of the most expensive collaboration mistakes in recent years. This isn't about punishment, it's about responsibility. As creators grow, so does the audience, and with that growth comes obligation. We're not here to patronise people, we're here to educate, and education requires respect. For intelligence, for context, and for the difference between enthusiasm and marketing. People can see right through cynical framing in the blink of an eye. I wish Adrian well. I believe that he'll recover from this, but the lesson here, it's not personal, it's structural. Do better, frame honestly, trust. Once lost, it costs far more than any watch promotion could ever earn, regardless of the watch itself. And remember, watch collecting isn't logical, but it is horological. There's a line in watch collecting where accuracy stops being impressive and starts becoming invisible. Most people never realise when they've crossed it. That line arrives much sooner than most people think. In one of my first videos, I said this: "This is a watch that really punches above its weight." I stand by that statement. Welcome back to Horological. This video isn't about winning a spec sheet comparison, it's about what happens when two very different watches become accurate enough that timekeeping itself fades into the background, because once that happens, something more interesting takes over. I want to start with a number: 0. That's how much my Bulova Precisionist has gained in 6 months. Not per month, not per quarter. And that's not the interesting part. For context, I sanity checked the result against a radio-controlled reference derived from atomic time signals. The G-Shock 5610U syncs nightly via multiband 6, so it effectively disappears as a variable. After 6 months, the outcome was still clear. The Precisionist required only 2 date corrections in that time, September and November. I avoided hacking the movement entirely. This wasn't a lab protocol, it was a real wrist ownership test. This isn't marketing rhetoric, it's measured behaviour over time, worn normally on rotation. Now if you know anything about quartz watches, you already know why that matters. Most standard quartz movements oscillate at 32 kHz. They're accurate, reliable and cheap to produce, but they're still susceptible to temperature swings and normal component tolerances. The Precisionist, it doesn't play that game. It runs at 262 kHz, 8 times the standard frequency. That higher frequency, that gives the movement far more timing resolution and stability, and Bulova claims improved resistance to temperature effects. Drift becomes a lesser variable. The result is a watch that doesn't just keep good time, it keeps boringly stable time. So boring in fact that you stop thinking about it entirely. And that's where things get interesting, because I didn't test it in isolation. Alongside the Precisionist, I wore a Casio Duro, a very different watch, standard quartz, no high frequency oscillator, no claim of extreme accuracy, no mythology at all. Really just a straightforward quartz diver built to be cheap, robust and replaceable. Over the course of a month, worn normally on rotation, the Duro gained 5 seconds relative to the Precisionist. That's not high accuracy quartz, but it is exceptionally good tool watch accuracy, and more importantly, it's good enough that it stops being a concern. Here's the mistake that people make. They assume accuracy is a ladder, that more accuracy is always better, that moving up the ladder always improves the experience. But that's only true up to a certain point. Beyond that point, accuracy stops being felt and it starts being academic. Once a watch is accurate enough that you never need to adjust it and never think about it drifting, it has already succeeded in its purpose. Anything beyond that is engineering expression, not necessity, and that distinction matters. The Precisionist exists to answer a question. How far can we push quartz accuracy without external synchronisation? No radio control, no atomic reference, no multiband signals, just frequency stability and precise execution. And it answers that question brilliantly. The smooth sweeping seconds hand, it isn't there to mimic mechanical romance. It's a visible byproduct of a higher frequency movement. 16 ticks per second. The watch wears like a tool, but it behaves like a calibrated lab instrument. That's its intent. The Casio Duro, well, that answers a different question. How accurate does a watch need to be before accuracy stops being the main story? And the answer is plus 5 seconds per month. When a watch gains 5 seconds in a month, the act of checking it, it becomes a bit of a moot point. At that point, accuracy has disappeared as a concern, and when a concern disappears, something else is able to take its place. Design, wearability, confidence and freedom. Here's a subtle but important difference with the Precisionist. You trust the watch. With the Duro, you forget the watch. Both are successes, but just in different ways. The Precisionist earns respect through precise engineering results and implementation. The Duro earns its place through rugged budget adequacy, and neither is wrong. This is where quartz often gets fully misunderstood. People treat quartz as a single category, cheap, disposable and soulless. But quartz isn't one thing. Quartz is a spectrum, all the way from an F91W all the way up to an FP Journe Elegante, and sometimes beyond. From barely regulated movements that drift noticeably to thermal compensated high frequency systems that easily rival laboratory instruments. The question isn't, is quartz good? The question is, What problem is this quartz movement trying to solve? The Precisionist, that solves the problem of precision. The clues in the name. The Duro solves the problem of robust, everyday reliability. And here's the important part. Neither watch pretends to be something it isn't. The Precisionist, it doesn't hide its ambition. Again, it's in the name. The Duro, it doesn't apologise for its simplicity. They meet somewhere in the middle, not because they're the same, but because the human relationship with time perception has limitations. Once a watch is accurate enough, our attention moves elsewhere. And that's the moment that most collectors miss. They chase accuracy long after it has stopped being the focus. They compare numbers that no longer change watch wearing behaviour. Meanwhile, the watches that actually get worn as intended are the ones that disappear on the wrist. A properly worn Bulova or Duro is arguably more valuable than any fully stickered Holy Trinity Safe Queen, and more accurate. They are the watches that don't demand adjustment. They don't invite retention value anxiety. They don't punish neglect. That's not a failure of ambition, that's maturity. There's also something quietly reassuring about this result. It tells us that good engineering doesn't always require extremity. A mass market quartz diver, built cheaply and honestly, it can sit within seconds per month of a high frequency precision instrument. That's not an embarrassing result, that's impressive by anyone's measure. It means that engineering has solved the problem well enough that we're free to focus on everything else. This is where quartz quietly wins, not by outperforming mechanical watches in romance or beating atomic clocks in precision, but by making timekeeping so reliable that it vanishes from the experience entirely. And once timekeeping vanishes, watch collecting becomes what it always was underneath, a study of design, of intent, of restraint, and of trade-offs. So yes, my Precisionist has gained 0 seconds over the 6 months that I tested it, effectively 0 at real-world scale. And yes, my Casio Duro gained 5 seconds in a month when it was put against it. Those numbers matter, but what matters more is what they don't change. They don't change how I feel wearing either watch. They don't change which one I choose on a given day. They don't change my confidence in either because both have already crossed the threshold. They're accurate enough that accuracy no longer defines them. And that's the real lesson here. The most interesting watches aren't the ones that chase perfection endlessly. They're the ones that know when the problem has already been solved. When Joseph Bulova declared that America runs in Bulova time, it wasn't exaggeration, it was confidence in engineering. With watches like this, timekeeping stopped being a question. On my wrist today, I've got my Seiko 5KX Pepsi bezel, and that runs between +6 and -4 seconds per day. And remember, watch collecting isn't logical, but it is horological. There are strong rumours circulating that the Rolex GMT Master 2 Pepsi may have been discontinued, and if that's true, speculation immediately shifts to one question. Is the Coke coming back? I own the Pepsi, I've lived with it, I understand the psychology of this watch. And today I want to take a measured look at what discontinuation would actually mean. Not for hype channels, not for flippers, but for real watch collectors and for the people still sitting on waiting lists. Because the reality is almost always more nuanced than the noise. Welcome back to Horological. First, clarity. Rolex rarely announces discontinuations in a dramatic fashion. It doesn't issue farewell press releases. It happens quietly. Production slows, allocations stop, dealer websites quietly update, and the community connects the dots. So when people say the Pepsi is discontinued, what they usually mean is authorised dealers are no longer receiving allocations. That is very different from Rolex issuing an official statement. The watch in question is the GMT Master 2 126710 BLRO Blue Rouge, the red and blue Cerachrome bezel model. If production has stopped, this wouldn't be unprecedented. Rolex rotates colourways. We know that. It has always rotated colourways. But here's the part that people underestimate. Rolex does not make decisions reactively. They think in decades. There's also something more symbolic happening. If the Pepsi exits and the Coke returns, the infamous RONR Rouge Noir, black and red, the GMT Master 2 effectively takes a leap from the cockpit back to the boardroom. The Pepsi is aviation mythology, Pan Am pilots, transatlantic travel, tool watch heritage. But the Coke, black and red, that was a colourway often associated with executive presence. The GMT is a power object rather than a pilot's instrument. So if this shift happens, it isn't just a bezel change, it's a further tonal change for the whole brand itself. The GMT becomes darker, more corporate, less cockpit seat, more boardroom table. There's also another potential move at play here, but I'm going to save that for the summary of this video. Rolex understands symbolism better than almost any other brand on earth. This follows brand direction over decades now, so let's address the practical question. What happens to people waiting? First of all, there is no global Rolex waiting list. You are not in line with Geneva. You are on an internal interest list at a retail partner. If Pepsi is discontinued, one of four things happen. One, your dealer's going to tell you production has stopped, end of the story. Two, you are perhaps offered an alternative, Batman, Sprite, maybe something else from the range. Three, if you are deeply embedded with your AD, you might receive one of the final allocations of the Pepsi. And four, you could also be first in line for a Coke, but that would require serious spend history and future intent to the brand pledged. There is no compensation, there is no grievance, there is no entitlement, just market reality. And here's something interesting. For many collectors, discontinuation ends a psychological chase. The tension dissolves. You either pivot, pay secondary prices, or you move on. And sometimes moving on is the healthiest option. This is where hype channels lose discipline. Discontinued does not automatically equal permanent price explosion. What usually happens is a short-term interest spike. Grey dealers will test higher prices, speculators pile in hard, and then you get stabilisation, because value is not created by absence alone, it's created by sustained demand. If the Coke launches, demand doesn't disappear, it redistributes. Markets don't panic long term, they rebalance. Now here's where this gets really interesting. When Rolex launched the Land Dweller, they entrusted early hands-on access to Teddy Baldessar. And since that launch, Teddy's brand has grown exponentially. He now operates with a large professional production team, high-end cinematography, scripting, lighting, post-production, the complete studio package. If Rolex were to launch something like a Coke GMT, one of the big three sports references, Daytona, Submariner, GMT Master 2, they would need scale, they would also need polish, they would need a safe pair of hands. And Teddy is the only YouTuber to have officially launched a Rolex watch to date. Last year, he and a small entourage attended Watches and Wonders. They're likely to repeat that whistle-stop tour again this year. Now remember, when the Land Dweller launched, Teddy had hands-on nearly a fortnight before Watches and Wonders, and that matters because a launch at that scale, it isn't filmed and produced overnight. There is brand sign-off involved, there is back and forth negotiation, there are compliance approvals, all under the tightest of security embargo conditions. And here's the key: if Rolex moves at a glacial pace, which we know they do, then the move from Land Dweller to a Coke GMT, it's not a leap. To Rolex, it's the blink of an eye. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, the Pepsi Cerachrome bezel. Rolex never fully resolved the production complexity of the red and blue ceramic bezel. The underlying challenge is chemistry. Extremely narrow variables during the firing process. You're baking red into ceramic, then chemically transforming half of it to blue. Attrition rates have reportedly been high and expensive. Early 126710 BLRO examples have even developed fading tendencies. Collectible? Absolutely yes, but not ideal from a manufacturing standpoint. The Pepsi bezel has never been scaled to the level that Rolex wanted, and it has been close to the chopping block for years now. Compare that with the red and black. Red and black is a far more straightforward ceramic production process. It has been tested subtly on a Daytona already. It's more predictable, more scalable, and Rolex has now had years of R&D time since the Pepsi issues first appeared. So what this potentially signals is consolidation. Blue has been the technical outlier in the GMT range. If Coke arrives, production becomes more stable, cleaner, more controlled, and Rolex always favours control. Now here's a question: if there is any doubt whatsoever about initial production scale, does Rolex launch the Coke in white gold first, then follow with steel? 1 or maybe even 2 years later? They've done this before. They test demand, control the rollout, and they create tier separation. And then there's bracelet configuration, polished centre link Oyster, 5-link Jubilee, both on the launch. These are not small decisions, they are strategic decisions. Now, personal reflection: I own the Pepsi. If it's discontinued tomorrow, my ownership experience, it doesn't change. The bezel is still red and blue, the movement is still robust, the engineering remains identical. Discontinuation does not add quality, it does not remove quality, it only changes availability at the AD. And collectors often confuse availability with intrinsic value. They are not the same thing. Even if you are not in the market for a Rolex, this matters, because when Rolex moves, the entire industry ripples. Microbrands react, secondary markets shift, often quickly, and colour trends cascade through the whole industry. Collectors reevaluate allocations. If the Coke launches, it could be the biggest Rolex professional sports release in recent years. We've lit this taper before and it's fizzled out, but with the BLRO quietly disappearing from individual AD websites, this might finally be the year. For those still waiting, you're not losing something, you're watching a cycle turn. For those who own one, nothing about your watch changed overnight. And for those speculating about the Coke, this isn't about a bezel, it's about how the most powerful watch brand in the world manages scarcity without ever admitting that that's exactly what they're doing. The Rolex GMT Master 2, reference 16760, the first Coke bezel GMT, was also the first model in the line to feature a truly independent adjustable local hour hand. Powered by the caliber 3085, it marked the transition from the original GMT Master architecture to the fully fledged GMT Master 2 system that we recognise today. How poignant would it be if a modern re-release of the Coke at Watches and Wonders also marked another architectural shift, becoming the first GMT Master 2 housed in a 41mm case. The 16760 redefined the movement. A 41mm Coke would redefine the case. Rolex has a habit of embedding technical milestones inside aesthetic updates. If history were to rhyme with that, the Coke would once again become the vehicle for change, rather than merely a nostalgic colourway. If you found this video useful, consider subscribing. Give us a like, leave a comment. I'll link to a couple of previous Rolex videos that I've produced on topics discussed here in this video. And remember, watch collecting isn't logical, but it is horological. When the Erebus Titan first landed in my hands, I approached it as I approach every single watch, on its own merits: case finishing, bevel execution, overall machining quality, tooling consistency. On the surface it presents as a confident, modern, micro-brand diver. Clean proportions, sharp transitions, contemporary industrial brushing. But then something caught my eye, not the dial, not the bezel, but inside the case. Later, when I handled the San Martin SN0147, I experienced a moment of deja vu, because what I saw inside that case, specifically the machining striation patterns and tooling signatures, they weren't just similar. They were identical, same radial tooling marks, same internal cut pattern geometry, same finishing behaviour in non-visible structural zones. Now that raises a legitimate question. Is there a shared manufacturing origin? San Martin, it's not a shadow corporation founded in 2016 by Lao Jiaming in Guangdong province. It began as a 3-person operation. The founder reportedly lived inside the factory during early development, studying case processing, dial production, hands manufacturing. They moved operations quite quickly to Dongguan province in 2017 to access stronger supply chain infrastructure and higher end processing facilities. They've collaborated with Chongying University Watch Design Institute. They hold multiple structural and design patents. They openly state that they provide OEM and ODM services. They work with high-end processing plants, and they understand that Swiss and German brands also use Chinese case processing partners and strap and bracelet makers. They're not hiding the fact that they now manufacture at scale, massive scale, and when I contacted them directly asking whether I could design a watch using the SN0147 as a base platform, the answer was yes, with conditions. Minimum order quantities, and the design must remain within the structural frame parameters of the SN0147 architecture. That's not unusual in OEM manufacturing, but it's important because it establishes that the SN0147 case architecture is available as a base production platform. When two watches share external case geometry, internal machining signatures, identical tooling striation behaviour, similar structural tolerances, the probability of coincidence decreases rapidly. Now, does that automatically mean that San Martin makes Erebus watches? No, it absolutely doesn't, but it does strongly suggest that one of the following might be going on. 1. A shared OEM case supplier. 2. Shared case factory tooling perhaps. 3. Direct manufacturing partnership, or 4. Private label production but based on the existing SN0147 architecture. And given that San Martin have confirmed that that SN0147 can be used as a base design under MOQ constraints, the question becomes legitimate. The real question isn't are they similar, the real question is, are we looking at two brands or one manufacturing ecosystem wearing two logos? Welcome back to Horological. I posted a link to my Seiko Arnie video on the Club Erebus Facebook page. It could have got deleted, but here's the interesting part. Jodie from Just One More Watch, the co-owner of Erebus Watches, along with Stephen Parker, actually liked the post. They both did, and Jodie owns the same Tropical Lagoon Arnie that I have, so I knew there was a shared synergy there. Then something unexpected happened. A mutual subscriber reached out and said, "Mate, we appear to live quite close to each other. Do you want to borrow my Erebus Titan, my brand new Erebus Titan that just arrived that day, to review on your YouTube channel?" What do you say to that? Of course I would love to review your brand new Erebus Titan for my YouTube channel. So I jumped in the car, I drove through Storm Bram, Scotland winter, of course we were having a storm, and we headed to the Higgety Piggity Tea Room in Lanarkshire. A brilliant agri-tourism cafe, by the way. Fantastic food, fantastic service, big props to the staff and the chef. And sitting on the table was the Erebus Titan. The first thing that hit me was the packaging. Years and years of Jodie opening AliExpress Pelican cases has clearly done something to him psychologically, because this packaging, it's next level. A leatherette zip case with elasticated safe-line storage for two watches, a filled out warranty card. Who even knew this was a thing? A filled out warranty card? A bracelet sizing tool appropriate for the actual bracelet supplied. Again, imagine that. And a branded polishing cloth. Before I even seen the watch, I thought, right, somebody has thought about this. Then the bracelet. Oh, Erebus call it the super engineered bracelet. They're not joking. The articulation is extremely consistent across all the links. It exudes quality immediately. The clasp has a very positive click, snap shut. And here comes the first small negative though. It's a double push deployment, but not a double security fold over clasp. That's slightly odd on a 500 metre dive watch with a helium escape valve, but we'll come back to that. This watch has an automatic case-integrated helium escape valve. For anyone new to the concept, helium molecules are tiny. On deep saturation dives, they can migrate into the case, especially at that deep pressure. They get compressed even smaller, and then when you ascend and decompress, those molecules expand rapidly. If they can't escape, they'll try to exit the watch by any way possible. They can pop the crystal, they can even damage the movement from the inside, putting pressure on the rotor and bending it into the actual working parts of the movement. The automatic helium escape valve, it prevents all of that by venting internal pressure the moment it exceeds a calibrated threshold. Is anyone taking the Erebus Titan saturation diving in the North Sea? Probably not, but it's really cool to have in any watch. You've got to agree with that, and it's properly done. This is implemented well in this watch. In Glasgow, the name Titan, that refers to a giant preserved cantilever crane on the River Clyde, a symbol of industry, engineering and built from Girder's philosophy. This watch absolutely leans into that heritage because the Titan weighs, you're not going to believe this, 225 grams as supplied. But, and this is really important here, the bracelet and clasp counterbalance the head of the watch perfectly, so the weight feels quality, not unmanageable. I guarantee prototype iterations were brutal on this watch, but the final finished product, it's well balanced and completely intentional. You can tell immediately that this is not Erebus's first release. This is a product of multiple design cycles and hard-learned lessons. Here in the UK, fully landed, this watch comes in at just over £500. That's a joke, but in the best possible way. I've handled lots and lots of dive watches over the years. Within seconds, this stood out as something very different, not a homage, not derivative, but a watch with a clear design intention and engineering philosophy well implemented. There are negatives. The class really should have a secondary safety lock for a 500 metre tool watch diver. You know, everything else is subjective though. If you like light watches, this is definitely not going to be for you. If you want a generic vanilla diver watch, there's plenty out there. This is not that. But, and here's the but in a positive way again, if you love big professional divers, think Rolex Deep Sea, a James Cameron, or a larger Blancpain 45mm 50 fathoms automatic, this is your territory. Let's look at a quick spec slide of this watch. The case diameter in this watch is 44mm, the thickness is 15.5mm, lug width is 22mm, lug to lug 48.5mm. The movement is a Seiko NH35. Power reserve will be round about 41 hours. The lume is BGW9 Super Luminova. The crystal is a double domed sapphire with clear AR coating on the inside. The water resistance is 500 metres and the weight as supplied on this bracelet is 225 grams. The bezel is 120 clicks, very positive clicks. A tiny little bit of backplay at the mid-click point, but much less than my Seamaster 300M Professional and less than that 2025 Planet Ocean watch that I recently handled. The alignment on the watch is excellent. There's no lazy or sloppy quality control going on here. The crystal's a subtle dome. It's beautifully judged. It adds a bit of vintage charm while managing to hide the thickness required for that 500 metre dive rating. The dial, this one has the Sunburst Radiant Purple Fume. Absolutely stunning and a brilliant choice for standing out in a watch box. The lume is outstanding, multi-layered application with proper curing time between coats. This adds cost and manufacturing complexity. Most brands skip this. Erebus didn't. The lume crown, a killer touch, attention to fine detail. The gasket material, Vuitton, a high-performance fluoroelastomer that I've encountered many times in the food industry. The same material used in automotive, aerospace, chemical processing and high-end food processing machinery, like a Pacojet for example. It grips noticeably as you tighten the crown. That is rare to see in a micro brand at this price. Feeling the watch in hand, I suspect that 500 metres rating is conservative. If this ever shows up on Beyond the Press, they might need to call Henka, the explosives guy, to actually damage this watch. The Erebus Titan, it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but that is not a weakness of this product. Being polarising is often the mark of a strong design philosophy. The Titan rejects the bland, vanilla, cookie cutter 40mm diver trend and instead it commits to a unique identity rooted in materials engineering, intention and Glasgow adjacent industrial design DNA, and I absolutely respect that. Huge thanks to Andy, a subscriber of my channel, for trusting me with a watch that had literally just landed the day before. That says a lot about the watch community, this channel and the Titan itself. If you're new to my channel, consider a like and subscribe for more horological content just like this. Comments are always welcome and I'll try and answer as many as I can in the first couple of days of publishing this video. And here's a question: would you wear an Erebus Titan? This watch isn't amazing for the price. It's amazing, full stop, and I'll bet you Jodie likes iron brew that's apparently made from girders too. But remember, watch collecting isn't logical. but it is horological. My personal watch collection was missing two things. It was missing a San Martin and it was missing a saturation capable dive watch. So I decided to kill both birds with one stone. This is a San Martin SN 0147. Why San Martin? Why now? Over the last couple of years, I'd quietly noticed something interesting. More than a few serious collectors in my social circle, people with genuinely deep watch collections had added a San Martin or two. Not because they were cheap, not because they were trendy, but because the finishing was good enough that curiosity eventually turned into ownership. I always knew I'd own one at some point. The question was, which one? Why this watch specifically? Well, I chose this watch for two main reasons. The first is obvious. Just look at it. This is a visually striking, technically aggressive watch with features that directly appeal to me. But the second reason is more interesting. At a time when watch trends are clearly sizing down, this does the opposite, deliberately, unapologetically, and in a very engineering-led way. The inner contrarian in me absolutely loves that. So let's take a closer look and get a little deeper on San Martin, no pun intended. Dial and first impressions. San Martin described the dial as a blue enamel wave effect dial. There is a gradient here, but it's subtle, nothing loud, nothing artificial. Technically, it's very well executed, and in the hand, it looks far more expensive than you'd expect to see at this level. This is also a heavy watch. Sized for my very average 7-inch wrist, it comes in at 225 grams. Yes, you heard that correct, 225 grams. That weight immediately reinforces the claim of 1,000 metres of water resistance. This does not feel theoretical, it feels plausible, highly plausible. The design language and character, this is one of the most industrial, brutalist leaning watches that I have had in hand, and yet the transitions are well finished. Edges are controlled, light play is excellent. There's even a slight whiff of Cybertruck style finishing here. Be warned, wearing this watch will provoke questions. People will notice it, people will ask about it. This is a heavy, industrial, tough as nails tool watch, no debate. In my wider watch collection, it sits at the extreme end of design intent and technical capability, risk and brand direction. This is a risky design for San Martin. I don't imagine it selling in massive numbers. And for me, that's perfect. For bigger wrists, for collectors who enjoy variety of size and intent, it's genuinely refreshing to have an option available like this. I am on the record many times now decrying collections that are full of 20mm lug width, 40mm case divers. You know exactly what I mean here. But more importantly, this watch signals something else. San Martin are clearly moving further into original design, and this watch confirms that trajectory. It's a gutsy move. There are comparisons which we'll go on to, but there's also direction and confidence here that many other Chinese brands simply do not show. The case back features an embossed shark logo, and I genuinely love it. At a time when some major brands have moved towards laser engraved casebacks, often to the disappointment of their core fans, this feels like a quiet win. It's confident, it's tactile, and it's executed properly. This watch uses Vuitton fluoroelastomer gaskets. It has an automatic helium escape valve and over-engineered casework to fully support that 1,000 metre saturation diver rating. From a technical design standpoint, it has what it needs to do the job it claims. The helium escape valve is essentially a pre-calibrated pressure release system, allowing helium molecules to escape safely during decompression after saturation diving. Do most owners need it? No. Does it add technical credibility? Absolutely. Does the inner watch nerd in us all absolutely love this? 100%. So let's now look at a quick spec slide of this watch. The case material is 316L stainless steel. Case diameter 43mm. Thickness 15.9mm. Lug width 22mm. The lug to lug 48.5mm. The movement is a Seiko NH35 3Hz. Power reserve 41 hours. The crystal is sapphire double domed with clear anti-reflective coating. Water resistance 1000 metres, and sized for my 7-inch wrist it's 225 grams. The bracelet here is specific to this watch. Solid female end links fit the case perfectly, allowing the bracelet to drop straight down, working with that shorter lug to lug to suit a range of wrists. Each link articulates smoothly, screw pins reinforce quality, finishing is excellent. The clasp is a fully milled double pusher deployant dive clasp, and the metal finishing here is as good as anything I've seen in my horological journey to date. Gap tolerances are tight, light play is consistent and genuinely impressive. The micro adjust gives about 10mm of travel, not massive, but adequate and absolutely necessary on a watch like this. The first major weakness, however, there's a glaring omission. There is no fold over double security mechanism on the clasp. On a saturation capable dive watch that should be there. This is a well executed clasp, but it's been deployed in the wrong usage case. The dial features applied indices, a high quality handset and no date. More on that shortly. Everything stands up extremely well under macro. The chapter ring is straight sided, highly polished and works beautifully with the blue and silver colour scheme. Visual coherence here is genuinely impressive, and I also have a theory why that is, but I'm going to save that for a future video. If that sounds like your kind of thing, subscribe, leave a comment and give the video a like. It genuinely helps the channel. Thank you. The bezel action is outstanding. Crisp, accurate, no backplay, none, zero, zilch. The engraved polished numerals against the media blasted background look high end, even from across the room. The loom performance is competent rather than spectacular. BGW9 is used, but applied a little sparingly here. That said, legibility day and night is very good, and the yellow accent on the seconds hand, it adds a pleasing touch of colour theory compliant contrast against the deep blue dial. Inside is the Seiko NH35. There's no date in this watch, which means you do get a ghost date position on the crown. I know how off-putting that is for some collectors. The reality of this is it was a cost-driven compromise. The NH38 movement would solve it, but availability and pricing make that difficult. Where the budget has gone instead is into the enamel dial, the embossed caseback, the Vuitton gaskets and the overall construction. It uses a metal movement holder that no one will ever see, but these design decisions are all quality led. And in terms of regulation, this example is running plus 4 seconds per day. This is excellent for a Seiko NH35 and well beyond factory expectations. This watch wears large, unapologetically so, but you don't buy a watch like this without knowing exactly what you're getting into. It will provide years of reliable service, and it will start conversations. If anyone doubts the build quality, just let them try the bezel. That answers everything in a tactile way. In a world of shrinking watches, this stands apart, but it isn't perfect. The two main weaknesses are clear: the ghost date position and a technically excellent clasp that simply isn't correct for this usage case. And yet, this is a big, bold, confident original watch, and a strong signal of where San Martin are heading. That makes it far more interesting than playing at safe tactics. And remember, watch collecting isn't logical, but it is horological. In an earlier review of the Erebus Titan, I said this: you can tell immediately that this is not Erebus's first release. This is a product of multiple design cycles and hard-learned lessons. Feeling the watch in hand, I suspect that 500 metres rating is conservative. And then I also said this: I guarantee prototype iterations were brutal on this watch. At the time, I suggested that the Titan felt like the end result of several unseen prototype iterations. I think I may have found one of them. To understand what's actually going on here, we need to be honest about the current state of play in watchmaking. Chinese manufacturers today possess two things at an extraordinary level: manufacturing capability and scalable delivery at industrial volume. What they generally do not possess, at least not yet, is high-level, original design leadership, deep localised marketing expertise in Western collector markets. Now imagine this scenario. Into that manufacturing environment walk two micro-brand owners, both experienced collectors, and one in particular with years of hands-on exposure to hundreds and hundreds of watches. You can probably see where this is going. Let's start with the design sheet. Both of these watches were clearly scripted from. Oversized saturation diver, check. Seiko NH35 movement, check. Helium escape valve, also check. Oversized crown, check. They both measure 7.5mm. Double dome sapphire crystal, check. At the design level brief, these watches are identical. The same problem to solve, the same engineering intent. Once you move from concept to execution, the differences do begin to appear. The Erebus Lume is noticeably stronger. That comes from multiple BGW9 layers applied but also cured properly between those layers. A small detail that adds time, cost and complexity to the manufacturing process. The crown in the Erebus Titan is at 4 o'clock. The crown in the San Martin is at 3 o'clock. The bezels. The Erebus Titan has a ceramic bezel insert. The San Martin has a machined metal bezel. Think Yachtmaster but on steroids. The date configuration: on the Erebus it has a framed date window at 6 o'clock. On the San Martin it doesn't have a date, it has a ghost date position. That last point matters. Jody knows that ghost dates are a hard no for many watch collectors and he deliberately sidesteps that controversy. The clasp is identical in both watches and a little bit inappropriate for both of them because it isn't a double security clasp. There are small differences in case diameter and thickness, so let's deal with that properly. The Erebus uses a stamped laser engraved caseback. The San Martin uses an embossed shark caseback. That embossed shark protrudes slightly further, which accounts for the thickness difference. As for the case diameter, the Erebus helium escape valve has a protruding collar. The San Martin valve is flush mounted, same valve mechanism, different case interface, mystery solved. Let's look at a spec slide of the Erebus Titan. The case diameter in this watch is 44mm, the thickness is 15.5mm, lug width is 22mm, lug to lug 48.5mm. The movement is a Seiko NH35, power reserve will be round about 41 hours. The lume is BGW9 Super Luminova. The crystal is a double domed sapphire with clear AR coating on the inside. The water resistance is 500 metres and the weight as supplied on this bracelet is 225 grams. Now let's look at a spec slide of the San Martin SN0147. The case material is 316L stainless steel. Case diameter 43mm. Thickness 15.9mm. Lug width 22mm. The lug to lug 48.5mm. The movement is a Seiko NH35 3Hz. Power reserve 41 hours. The crystal is sapphire double domed with clear anti-reflective coating. Water resistance 1000 metres and sized for my 7-inch wrist it's 225 grams. This brings me back to something I said in my Erebus Titan review. Feeling the watch in hand, I suspect that 500 metres rating is conservative. At the time, I felt the 500 metre dive watch rating was a little conservative given the construction and materials used. The San Martin is rated to 1000 metres, using effectively the same core design. This shows two very different philosophies. Erebus doesn't oversell the watch, they're building trust. San Martin are pushing the design to its perceived limit. Neither approach is wrong. One is conservative and brand protective, the other is confidence forward. I opened the San Martin. The helium escape valve is real, it is spring loaded, it does open under pressure. I can't confirm the exact release pressure, I can't confirm the calibration of it, but it is functional. The gaskets used are Vuitton fluoroelastomer, coloured black. On the Erebus Titan, the gaskets are also Vuitton, but coloured versions. That incurs a small additional cost. I've bought plenty of these in the past, and I know the cost differences between the different colours. But functionally, the performance is the same. Vuitton is exactly what you want. Excellent chemical resistance, excellent long-term compression recovery, ideal for crown assemblies with repeated mechanical use. Both watches have a machined identical NH35 movement holder. It's machined out of metal. Both watches use a wavy washer or a wave spring underneath the case back. Its job is to maintain constant compression on the case back gasket over time, compensating for machine tolerances, temperature changes and material relaxation, rather than relying purely on torque. The wave washer keeps the sealing system elastically pre-loaded, which helps preserve long-term water resistance and protects the gasket from uneven crushing during assembly. It's a small detail, but it's proper tool watch engineering implementation, the kind you only see when a case is designed with real pressure management in mind. Some commenters questioned how serious this watch really is. Having opened it, I can assure you this is absolutely serious engineering. On paper, the San Martin lands much cheaper. In the UK, VAT and import charges narrow that gap, but there's no escaping it. The Erebus Titan is the more expensive watch. What you get for that extra money is excellent customer support, multiple dial and colour variants, a more refined case and bracelet, a fully resolved design, not just a single execution. The San Martin is one watch. The Erebus Titan is a range of watches. Several of my collector friends already own the Erebus Titan, so I went the other way. The San Martin is the most brutal, angular, unfinished version of this design. It lacks the final layer of micro-brand polish, and I love it for that. It feels closer to a raw industrial design project. The relationship between OEM manufacturing and ODM development is complicated behind the scenes, but it becomes much more simple when you look at the end products. There is always a risk when you work with a manufacturer. They learn, they adapt, they can copy. The fact that San Martin released this watch in this form actually highlights how strong the Erebus refinement process really is. This doesn't look like bad faith, it looks like a symbiotic relationship, and when you combine a manufacturing powerhouse like San Martin with strong design instincts, proper marketing and customer focused execution, you start to see just how much untapped potential exists at this cost envelope. That's the real story here. And remember, watch collecting isn't logical, but it is horological. The Seamaster versus the Submariner debate, it refuses to die. Everyone compares these watches, almost nobody fully understands them. Sometimes blinded by tribal loyalties, but the truth is this, the debate is already over, just not in the way that people think. Not because one watch won, not because one watch failed, but because over time these two watches stopped trying to be the same thing. And once you see that, the argument dissolves. Welcome back to Horological. For decades, these were treated as rivals. Two steel dive watches, the same water resistance, similar size, similar intent, at least on paper. But today, comparing them directly, it misses the point entirely, because what matters now isn't what they can do, it's how you live with them. Let's start with the Submariner. Let's look at a quick spec slide of this watch. The case material is 904L stainless steel. The case diameter is 40mm. The thickness is 12.5mm. The lug width 20mm. The lug to lug 48mm. The movement, it's Rolex's in-house caliber 3135. The power reserve 48 hours. The crystal, it's flat sapphire with AR coating only under the Cyclops. Water resistance is 300 metres and sized for a 7-inch wrist. On the OEM Oyster bracelet, it weighs 153 grams. Mechanically, it's still extraordinary. The bezel action, 120 clicks. It is the best in the industry, full stop. Nothing else feels as precise, as confident, or as inevitable. The legibility, it is unmatched. That Mercedes hour hand and the sword minute hand, they are among the most recognisable and readable silhouettes in mainstream watchmaking. At a glance, in any light, you'll know the time. This is Rolex at its very best. Interfaces perfected through refusal to overcomplicate. Omega strengths are complexity and engineering expression. The Seamaster takes a completely different route. Let's look at a quick spec slide of this watch. The case material is 316L stainless steel. The case diameter is 42mm. The thickness 13.6mm. The lug width is 20mm. The lug to lug is 49.9mm. The movement, it's Omega's in-house 8800 coaxial automatic caliber. Power reserve is 55 hours. The crystal is domed sapphire with AR coating on both sides. The water resistance is 300 metres and sized for a 7-inch wrist on the OEM bracelet. It weighs 168 grams. Dial to dial, these watches are difficult to compare because they're solving different problems. The Hulk's green sunburst is pure visual theatre, an emotional work of art that lives in the light. The Omega Seaweed Green Laser Abellated Zirconia Ceramic Wave Dial is a technical masterpiece. It's controlled, repeatable, and it's engineered at scale. Omega's case construction, it's more complex, more facets, more transitions, those lyre lugs, more visible effort. You see the engineering, and that's the point. The philosophies diverge everywhere else you look. At 300 metres, the Submariner is so overbuilt that the notion of a helium escape valve, it's a complete non-starter. The case itself does the job required. Omega chooses visible solutions, the helium escape valve, the domed sapphire crystal, external anti-reflective coating, stunning when new, but live with external AR long enough, and once it marks Rolex's subtle restraint, it suddenly makes sense. Omega shows you the movement, Rolex locks it away. One invites curiosity, the other asks for trust. On the wrist, the differences become unavoidable. Quick wrist check just outside Ferrari land. I've got on the Rolex 116610LV, aka the Hulk. Rolex's bracelet tapers, the clasp is industry leading. Glide lock is as refined as the bezel is, it's intuitive, functional, fully resolved. Omega's clasp, it does the job well, but it can't compete here, and yet despite all of that, the daily wear equation flips on its head. Here in the UK, wearing a Submariner can carry real world risk, and everybody knows what that means. That changes what daily watch actually needs to be. The Submariner, it may be mechanically capable of anything, but psychologically, it's no longer frictionless for many owners. The Seamaster still is. In my world, the Submariner always lives in its OEM bracelet. It feels complete, final, case closed. The Seamaster, it thrives in change, rubber, NATO, leather, it adapts effortlessly, it refreshes itself continually. That flexibility, it matters in real ownership. So which watch is better? Well, the honest answer is this. That question belongs to history. These watches stopped being similar a long time ago now. They didn't drift apart. They shook hands and they chose different paths. The Submariner hit refined, the Seamaster expressed. If you want tactile refinement, buy the Submariner. If you want collector expression, buy the Seamaster, but stop pretending that these watches are rivals. They don't compete anymore, they coexist. Choose the one that matches you and stop arguing about the other. And remember, watch collecting isn't logical, but it is horological. We just witnessed what happens when collaboration transparency collapses. Creators filming promotional material, then reviewing the product with no declared financial interest, direct financial association left undeclared, and somehow no paid promotion disclosure in sight. A product that instead of changing the game, it was actually playing the game. Here in the UK, that is not a grey area, that is regulated. So today, we take a deep breath and we reset, because this is collaboration done properly. Welcome back to Horological. Clear disclosure.
I am not classing this video as a review, specifically because I do undertake paid work for WatchGecko, who are one half of this collab, and this watch has been given to me for free.
Paid promotion declared where appropriate to do so, framed correctly as an awareness campaign, no game changers here, and all priced without ego or excessive collaboration tax. Let's look at what happens when restraint replaces hype and self-indulgence. After the Bark and Jack Christopher Ward collaboration situation, scrutiny is healthy when a creator participates in filming and producing the promotional material used to market a watch, when they are one of only a handful with embargoed launch access. When there is obvious commercial alignment, the paid promotion label should be used. And here it was, cleanly, upfront, unambiguous. George declares his involvement verbally within the first 20 seconds of his video. He states he's not impartial.
So I cannot be trusted to be impartial.
He frames his video as awareness, not review.
I am not classing this video as a review.
That is transparent. That is refreshing. Now that that's established clearly, let's look at the actual watch. This collaboration is based on the C60 Sealander platform, and crucially, WatchGecko stated clearly they're not reinventing the wheel.
From the outset, this project wasn't about reinventing the wheel.
And that restraint matters. No forced nostalgia, no indulgent mythology, no fictional ancestor cave painting tools involved, just a custom Fume dial, subtle dual brand engraving, a DLC coated fixed 24-hour bezel, a custom engraved DLC coated caseback outer, individually numbered casebacks. That numbering, that adds manufacturing complexity, it adds time and it adds cost. Here it appears to have been partially absorbed, not fully passed on, and that flies directly in the face of the collabs always cost more narrative. Let's look at a quick spec slide of this watch. The case material is 316L stainless steel. The case diameter, 39mm. The thickness, 11.9mm. The lug width, 20mm. The lug to lug, 45.8mm. The movement, it's a Sellita SW330-2 with the Christopher Ward custom rotor. It runs at 4 Hz. The power reserve is 56 hours. The crystal, it's flat sapphire with inner AR coating. Water resistance is 150 metres and it weighs 62 grams, and that's case weight. It's a strap platform after all. The Christopher Ward C63 Sealander GMT UK retail price £1,060. Add custom engraving direct from Christopher Ward to that, then the UK retail price becomes £1,090 on the Bader bracelet. The WatchGecko limited edition C63, that retails at £1,195 on that Bader bracelet. So what is the delta? £105. For that £105 extra, you receive a custom Fume dial, a DLC coated bezel, a DLC coated caseback ring, individually numbered cases, dual-signed hardware on the included military-style nylon strap. On their website, WatchGecko's closest equivalent nylon strap retails at £28. You can also buy the watch with other options besides the Christopher Ward Bader bracelet. The Sedona rubber strap option as a standalone product, well, that currently retails at £98. The full octopod system, that currently retails at £95. So buying the watch with the Sedona orange rubber option over the octopod system, well, that saves £3, as WatchGecko have cleverly kept price parity with these two options. Now that illustrates margin flexibility, no gouging, no inflated ego tax. WatchGecko is primarily a UK based strap company. This watch is only available in the UK, unfortunately. But what did they do with this product? Well, they created a subtle platform watch, one that works on everything. It's not loud, it's not self-referential.
Every great go anywhere, do anything watch has one thing in common. It doesn't demand attention, it earns it.
It's not design heavy for the sake of it. In that strategic positioning, this becomes a long-term ecosystem piece that pays compound interest. A serious fan of both brands will potentially own this watch alongside years of accumulated WatchGecko straps. That is how you build recurring value. The choice to make this a fixed number limited series, well, that shows restraint. It's less cash grab and more value add for the brand's most loyal fans to indulge in and enjoy. WatchGecko even made a subtle reference to the somewhat infamous now Bader bracelet being not too spicy. Cheeky, but it's well earned, because here the strap offering is the point, not the bracelet. And the military style nylon is included with every configuration. From the pricing picture, it appears effectively bundled at cost, and that is value addition, not extraction. This is the key difference. When creators stand to gain financially through direct association with a collaborator, the transparency, it's not optional, it's expected. Here in the UK, it is regulated. Here, paid promotion label must be used, financial involvement fully declared, not framed as review. Impartiality explicitly denied.
So I cannot be trusted to be impartial.
That is textbook transparency. That is respectful to the viewer. That builds long-term trust. £105 for a Fume dial, 2 DLC coated components, custom engraving, limited edition numbering, and a NATO strap. Depending on how you calculate finishing cost, you could argue that that NATO was thrown in for free, or worst case scenario, at cost. Either way, this is not collaboration tax as we know it. It is a true value pitch. Could WatchGecko have benefited from watching the Bark and Jack debate unfold? Possibly, but watch collaborations take time. We've already established that. Additional process steps, dial development, supply chain coordination. The direction of this project was likely set over a year ago. The restraint that we see now was probably baked in from the very beginning of this collaboration, and that is the difference. Intent. Collaboration is not the problem, opacity is. Financial ambiguity absolutely is. This release demonstrates transparency, proportion and value alignment. It is a measured release. Customer respect, no forced mythology to dwell on, no creator indulgence tax, no hidden commercial relationships, just a platform watch, some subtle design tweaks, fair pricing, clear disclosure, collaboration, done right. And in a hobby that's built in trust, that matters. I was genuinely concerned about Christopher Ward, and I awaited this release with bated breath. For me, this release has cleared up a few niggling questions, but remember, watch collecting isn't logical, but it is horological.